The public saw the restructuring. The employees, well, they saw the sudden route cuts. And investors saw the frankly grim financial reports. But when we actually take all the official corporate documents and piece them together, a much bigger, much more fascinating story begins to emerge. On one hand, you've got an airline that delivered this beloved passenger experience. A premium product that travelers absolutely raved about. But on the other hand, you have a company plunging into sudden, deep financial distress. How do those two realities exist at the exact same time, inside the exact same company? So what really happened inside Norse Atlantic Airways before and during its restructuring? That's the central mystery we're unraveling today. We're looking at a modern airline that, according to its own 2025 annual report, achieved a staggering 96% load factor. Think about that for a second. That means their planes were almost completely full. Yet, despite literally packing their aircraft, they were suddenly forced to slash historical routes, adapt their capacity, and effectively put the entire company up for sale. To understand how things escalated so quickly leading into that 2026 restructuring, we have to look way past the carefully worded press releases. In this explainer, we're going to peel back the layers of public perception. We'll be using verified corporate documents, financial statements, and internal company presentations to build a complete picture of their growth, their strategy, and the sudden market challenges that completely derailed them. To truly understand Norse Atlantic, you have to understand the shadow of the airline that came just before it. Back in January 2021, Norwegian Air Shuttle announced it was totally abandoning its highly ambitious low-cost long-haul operation after years of brutal financial losses. Literally just 2 months later, Norse Atlantic Airways was born. And honestly, it wasn't just a spiritual successor. Norse leased 12 of the exact same ex-Norwegian Boeing 787 Dreamliners, they moved right into Norwegian's old hub at London Gatwick, and they started flying many of the exact same transatlantic routes. Now, Norse promised investors that they had learned the painful lessons of the past. They outlined a business model that explicitly avoided aggressive expansion, focusing instead on point-to-point routes with proven demand, all while keeping an incredibly tight cost base. But, get this, the corporate DNA was still heavily linked. Bjorn Kjos, the very man who founded Norwegian Air and spearheaded its original long-haul expansion, actually took a 15% minority stake in Norse Atlantic right at its launch. And if you were looking at it from the passenger's perspective, the strategy seemed to be working beautifully. Up in the air, the Norse Atlantic premium economy product was highly praised by reviewers and everyday travelers alike. It was spacious, category-leading, and it offered tremendous value. Passengers were getting a seat pitch and a level of comfort that legacy airlines were charging absolute multiples more for. But down on the ground, a totally different narrative was forming. While the in-flight product was great, public commentary from former passengers alleged severe operational fragility. According to public claims on platforms like Trustpilot and various consumer sites, there were widespread allegations of abruptly canceled flights with very little notice. On top of that, passengers alleged that UK 261 compensation claims were ignored or heavily delayed, and that getting a hold of accessible customer support was nearly impossible. These operational complaints mirrored the exact same reputational damage that plagued Norwegian in its final years. Customer reviews, however, only tell a fraction of the overall story. To see the true health of an airline, you have to look at the underlying corporate financials. And there's a pretty unforgiving reality to aviation economics. In short-haul, low-cost flying, an airline can turn a profit by charging rock-bottom base fares and making up the margin on ancillary fees, stuff like baggage, seat selection, and snacks. But on an 8-hour transatlantic flight, the fuel bill alone absolutely dwarfs anything you could possibly extract from a passenger in add-on fees. Legacy airlines solve this math problem using high-yield business and first-class cabins to essentially subsidize the economy seats. The problem? Norse didn't have a business class. Without that high-yield front cabin, every single seat has to pull its own weight, and the official financial documents reveal just how much this business model was struggling behind the scenes. In 2024, Norse Atlantic posted a staggering net loss of over $135.4 million. The airline that was supposed to have finally fixed the low-cost long-haul model was bleeding cash. Faced with those severe losses, management clearly knew they couldn't just keep operating the way they were. They needed a critical, company-saving move to stem the bleeding, and it's centered around a concept called ACMI. That stands for Aircraft, Crew, Maintenance, and Insurance. It's also known in the industry as wet leasing. In an ACMI arrangement, Norse provides the fully staffed and maintained aircraft to another airline. Crucially, the other airline takes on all the commercial risk. They pay Norse a fixed rate per block hour, regardless of how many tickets are actually sold. And that leasing airline is the one who covers the volatile cost of fuel. The really crucial point here is just how aggressively Norse executed this pivot. They signed long-term agreements with Indigo, which is India's largest airline, and P&O Cruisers. By January 2026, Norse had dedicated 6 of its 12 aircraft entirely to ACMI and charter operations. Half of their entire fleet was now generating stable, predictable income, completely immune to fuel price swings and consumer ticket demand. And honestly, it worked. This strategy successfully narrowed their operating losses from $97 million in 2024 all the way down to $20 million in 2025. At the end of 2025, with load factors hitting 96% and the ACMI strategy stabilizing the balance sheet, everything appeared to be going exactly according to plan. Out of nowhere, in early 2026, sudden and severe geopolitical tensions escalated in the Middle East. Global energy supply chains were disrupted practically overnight. The April 2026 company update shows this massive, immediate 143% spike in jet fuel prices between February and April of that year. For an independent long-haul airline, an exogenous shock like this is devastating. Norse disclosed that this sudden fuel spike added approximately $10 million per month in extra cost to its own scheduled network. To put that into perspective, if those prices held, it threatened to add an estimated $100 million in unbudgeted costs over 12 months. Because tickets had already been sold months in advance based on the old, lower fuel prices, every single one of those scheduled flights was suddenly financially underwater. This shock literally split the airline's operational fate right down the middle. The half of the fleet dedicated to ACMI operations, completely protected, because Indigo and P&O were the ones paying those inflated fuel bills. But Norse was forced to abruptly slash its own historical scheduled routes just to stop the bleeding. They canceled routes to Los Angeles, they dropped Manchester to Bangkok, and most symbolically, they canceled their Nordic routes to the USA, shrinking their own network down to just 6 aircraft across 3 European bases. See, it's not just about one airline facing a fuel spike. It's about the historical resilience of this specific business model when external conditions turn hostile. By April 2026, the documents show Norse undertaking desperate financial maneuvers just to survive. They formally suspended their 2026 profit guidance. They initiated a $110 million fully underwritten rights issue, alongside a $70 million bridge loan, just to secure immediate liquidity. And more tellingly, they launched a formal strategic review utilizing an international investment bank. In corporate finance terms, exploring a sale, merger, or partnership effectively meant the independent airline was up for sale. When we zoom out and lay out the timeline, a very clear 45-year historical pattern emerges. From Laker Airways back in 1982 to Zoom Airlines in 2008 to Norwegian in 2021, independent, low-cost, long-haul airlines consistently face existential crises the second an exogenous shock hits. Legacy carriers can absorb these shocks because they have massive global networks, high-yield business-class cabins, and parent company financial backing. Pure-play, independent carriers simply do not have that structural safety net. Which leaves us with the ultimate question. Norse Atlantic ran an airline that passengers genuinely loved, and they executed a brilliant ACMI pivot that honestly almost saved them. But the absolute second fuel prices spiked, the math broke. So is independent low-cost long-haul a structural impossibility? Or is it simply waiting for an airline that can finally crack the code? Thank you for exploring the data with us today on This Explainer, and we'll see you next time.